Hey folks, Nick here from another BookTube channel, and I've got a really interesting book on the table today. We are celebrating Garb August this month. If you don't know what that is, maybe you only follow me for my comic content, so you haven't seen my book videos. But through this month of August, me and a bunch of other booktubers, led by Criminali, are celebrating trash literature. And being a comic fan, I have to include trashy comics into that celebration as well. So throughout this month, you're going to be seeing some trashy comic deep dives on Sundays. And you don't get a lot trashier than the Air Pirates Funnies #1. This is an underground comic from 1971 published by Hell Books, which was a publication, which was an imprint from Dan O'Neill, Bobby London, Ted Richards, Gary Hallgren. They were the ones contributing to this book. This was, as you could probably imagine, an unauthorized usage of Disney characters in an underground comic book. Now, if you're not too familiar with underground comics, they were independently published comic books that became prominent in the 60s, but continued since then, of creators outside of the mainstream writing and making comics that were countercultural. They usually heavily featured sex, violence, drugs, and so on. The best ones are satirical and are poking fun at something that's going on in the world. Robert Crumb was especially prolific and skilled at that. So Air Pirates Funnies, this is a really famous cover. If you're on Instagram, in the comic book community there, you've probably seen this pop up once in a while, but you've probably only ever seen the cover. I don't know that anyone's ever actually shown the inside of this book. Maybe there's other videos out there, I don't know. But I thought it would be fun to go through this and actually see what is inside this unauthorized comic that Disney actually did issue a cease and desist letter after. There were only 2 issues of this released. I don't have the second one. I have this first one. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't like this book. I bought it. I wanted it because of the cover. I'm not a Disney fan, honestly. I really don't care for Disney and their products and their history and all that nonsense. I'm not a Disney adult. And I was not really a Disney kid, not a Disney adult. And this, so I wanted this comic just because it's making fun of Disney, or I assumed it would be. And I really I'm not too satisfied with what is present in here. What the stories they actually decide to tell, the cartooning in here. I think it's pretty, it's okay. It's better than I could do. I mean, I'm not an artist. But the first story is about this character, Dirty Duck. I think he's an original creation. But his whole shtick is, as is common in most of these underground comics, he's horny, and he's looking for someone to have sex with. And before I continue flipping through here, you're gonna see some unpleasantly sexual imagery in here. It's all like cartoon animal characters. So I don't know, maybe YouTube won't take this video down, but I'll skip over like the really gross stuff or the stuff that I think will really get me in trouble. But if you're not into that, if you don't want to see that, you could go ahead and click off. I won't blame you. But it's really interesting. You don't see this stuff ever. This is not something that's going to ever be reprinted. This is a true historical document. So Dirty Duck goes to a dirty bookstore, gets kicked out for being a lech. And this is really what I mean by, like, this isn't satisfying to me, or I'm not really impressed with this comic. This strip in particular is being done by Bobby London. And if you're doing a lampooning of Disney style, I want more out of the cartooning. Like, there's a door slam here that just feels way too static. Like, the door's got very little bend to it. There's not a lot of motion in the actual, the panel itself. And we see more stuff like that. There's a little bit of creativity here with different panels, and in this case, there's no panels. But it doesn't seem like it's serving any particular purpose. Um, and again, there's just like there's cartoon violence, but it feels stiff. It doesn't have that rubberiness that you would kind of expect out of a cartoon like this. Like this here, um, he's pretending, the Dirty Duck is pretending to be a music uh, teacher, and he has a student come over that he's trying to have sex with, and she knows it. She's onto him, so she has the classic boxing glove spring out and punch him in the face to teach him a lesson. But I don't know. This is kind of boring. Like they're pretty centered in the panel. There's no real cartoonishness to this. Maybe it's because he keeps it within a rectangular panel. Try breaking out of it a little bit. Stretch this a little bit. I don't know. Do something a little bit more visually interesting. It just doesn't. It doesn't sing. It doesn't seem like a fun cartoon being satirized. It just feels like kind of going through the motions. Another one here, he gets bashed on the head with a mallet, but you get cartoon eyes, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like there was too much thoughtfulness put into it. Silly Sympathies is next by Dan O'Neill. This one's a bit stronger in the like the cartooning. I would say it feels a little bit more overtly Disney-ish. Although the story, again, I don't understand. I don't think there's anything actually being satirized here. I think it's just a dirty story with Disney-looking characters, and it just doesn't really work. There's a very gross sex scene on the left side here, which you're welcome to pause it and look that over if you like, but it's pretty standard for underground comics. And I would talk more about the story, but I really don't think that there's much to talk about. Dan O'Neill has another strip at the end that's better cartooning, I think. I'm not a huge fan of like the hatching on this one. Like it feels a little bit too amateur or scratchy. Like this doesn't look right. I don't know what this shadow is supposed to be or why he's so heavily in shadow. Like he looks like he's just sprouted hair like all over. Like it doesn't read as shadow hatching. It just reads, it's awkward. It's just a little weird. We get a little bit of a Jiminy Cricket character who's trying to introduce this bug to essentially like a prostitute that has multiple bodies, so she's got multiple torsos to play with. I'm actually going to skip the next page because it's one of the more grossly sexual ones, and I don't even want to flash it on screen for a second, so we'll skip right over to here. This stuff, I think, is a little bit better. The Dope and Dan and Zeke Wolf strips by Ted Richards. This is a little bit more visually appealing to me. I think he's got the cartooning down. It's a lot cleaner. You could see that's a lot cleaner. Not nearly as scratchy. There's a lot of white, a lot of open space, a lot of use of just heavy flat blacks and flat whites. With the occasional head hatching in the background. These are fun. These are pretty fun strips. The Dope and Dan is like an army guy who is smoking pot. He's a pothead. So the story, like this story here, is about him convincing his sergeant to try just smoke with him for once, because he's always coming down on him for it. And the sergeant ends up liking it. They get too high, and they both get thrown in the brig. And he makes the sergeant makes a comment about how it sure is crowded in this jail because they got busted for pot. And I guess that's supposed to be making a statement on how everybody's doing it, and yet we're still it's still being criminalized and punished. But who knows? I don't know. So Keyhole Comics here. This one's by Gary Halgren. This one's all right. This one is more overtly using Disney characters. In the previous stories, it was just kind of a Disney style. This one is very clearly Donald Duck. And I don't know I don't think this is supposed to be goofy. Maybe it is. And it's just an artist depiction, his own interpretation. But this is clearly Minnie Mouse. And the conceit of this one is that Donald and this not goofy guy are trying to spy on Minnie when she's in the bath. So I, I read through this, and there's this thing floating in the sky. I do not know what this is. I do not know what this is supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be the moon. Now that I think about it, it's supposed to be maybe a crescent moon. It's just drawn in such a strange way where it does not at all feel like that. But at least there's some interesting backdrop here where it's the black sky and the white silhouette of the cityscape. Daffy and Goofy, they go outside her window. Daffy is propping up Goofy on his shoulders, and Goofy's telling him, how sexy this is, and oh my god, he can't believe what he's seeing. Daffy loses his patience. He tries to move up to the top, causes their little makeshift ladder to fall over, and now they get caught by Minnie, who slams the window down on his hand. Again, this is kind of, I don't know. Give me a bit more there. Cartoon violence should be over the top and really ridiculous, and I just don't feel like they delivered that here. It's just, here's a Disney character doing something that's gross. Enjoy. And then we get the only strip in this comic that I think works pretty well from a cartooning standpoint, because it's the most creative, I would say, and it just reads the best. This is another Silly Sympathies by Dan O'Neill, and we've got Mickey now. And Mickey is lamenting to the world that nobody will fuck him. Nobody will have sex with him. Especially Minnie. Daisy won't do it. And while he's crying about this, he gets kidnapped by this guy. What's his name? Calls him Sylvester Shyster. I do not know if that's a real character. But he gets kidnapped, and they fly up into this blimp in the sky, where he's taken captive by all these different characters. This is like the most creative camera angle we've gotten so far in this issue, where after they land, we get the feet of the other captors that come in, these wolf legs. The lettering changing color as it passes through the shadow. Like, that works well to me. I like that. And the main bad guy here, this kind of blotty looking fella, what's he called? The Phantom Blot is what Mickey calls him. They've got him hostage, and then later that week, this is another sequence that I like. We've got the cartoony house, cartoony moon of the Blot going into the house. We see a little iris of Minnie, so we know that, I guess that's her in the house. And then we get the same view, but now he's running off with her over his shoulder. She yells into the night. Good. Very good. Like that. So Minnie's thrown in the brig with Mickey. I don't know why they've kidnapped them. The writing in this book is not very good. It's not very clear. And then we get an actual Goofy appearance, where they've received, I guess, a ransom note. I don't know who this is. I don't know who that's supposed to be. Chief O'Hara, he's called. If you're a Disney fan and that means something to you, let me know. But they call in a special agent to deal with the kidnapping. And this is another fun sequence where we get these iris panels here. This feels to me like it's out of an old, like, Dell Disney comic, where he pushes the button goes through these telephone wires that reach the signal there. Then those wires connect here to a bell. The bell scares a dog, who scares a cat. The cat jumps off this thing, which drops a ball onto this hand, which throws a dart into this guy's butt while he's, of course, because it's an underground comic, while he's mid-thrust. And he's their agent. He gets the ransom note. He's going to go save Mickey. And Mickey has convinced Minnie that since this might be the last time they're together, we get some sexual content. She's finally going to have sex with him. But unfortunately, doesn't last long. They drop, the bad guys drop them out of the Zeppelin through a hatch in the ground. They've fallen down a chute, fall through the sky. Minnie is caught by this giant pterodactyl for some reason. And then the pterodactyl drops her into an active volcano. And even more bizarrely, as Mickey plunges through this wooden bridge, there's a gorilla playing the piano, and he gets very upset that he's not going to be able to get to his scales on the piano. And that's where we end, on a cliffhanger with Mickey stuck in the bridge and the gorilla holding a piano very awkwardly in one hand behind him. I don't know what to make of this. This was a bit nonsensical, and I don't know that I'm ever going to get the second issue because, again, I don't really like this comic, and it's not cheap. This is not a cheap book. I paid handsomely for this. It's a really nice copy too. So to spend that much money again on the second issue for something that I don't really like that much, it's probably never going to happen. And that's what I figure for you guys is, if you ever want to see inside this comic, it's a lot of money, so you might not want to put that money down. So that's what it looks like. That's what you could expect from it. I hope that you found this video interesting. Sorry if it offended anybody with the weird cartoon sex antics. I tried to glaze over as much as possible. But yeah, cool. Thank you guys very much for sticking through this. Expect more trashy comics this month. Thank you for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.